All right, everybody, welcome back to the KSR YouTube channel, where if you notice the background, we are back at Will's shop, and we are getting super close on SoccerMom's engine harness. Will's got a killer start going on all of our HIAC, TPS, fuel pressure, coolant temp sensor, our front camshaft sensor. Whoops. Got all of that routed nice and neat. Just look at that little teeny wire that covers all of the harnesses there. But I'm about to get started on doing the coils, and then we might even get one of the injector harnesses done today. And that would get this thing back to where we could crank it again, except we don't have a motor back yet. Minor detail. All right, let's jump into it and see what all we can get done today. All right, so like I said, I'm gonna be starting on doing the coil harnesses. You can see where Will's got the bundle all done up for the main plug here, and just how this is gonna end up. That little twist, and that's eventually gonna take the whole harness with it. And if we need to pull the motor out of the car, of course we need to find it, there we go. And that will snap right back on there. Some of you caught it in the last SoccerMom video. We didn't have any sealer in there. We are going to take these 4 bolts out, put a little sealer behind it, and then bolt that back up. Now that it is all solid, we may even get some washers to replace the lock washers, because it tore the paint up. And I know it's little, you won't ever hardly see it, but we got a couple little scratches we need to touch up back here on the firewall. But, you know, trying to keep this thing a whole lot nicer looking than it was. But we are getting super close, and I'm excited to get this coil harness done. So probably gonna lock in on a time lapse. So I'll set it up here on the dash, and then I'm just gonna, if you follow along, you'll kind of see my process of, basically I'm gonna start at this coil, and then I'm gonna work my way back, have it to where it does a loop and comes in from the harness, because you don't want it to where it just goes straight into the deal there. So our whole harness is gonna have a 90-degree boot on it from the connector. So I need to make sure that my coil harness is long enough to go down and then loop back up into our bundle here. So let's get started off on all that. Talk to you again in just a few minutes. All right, before we jump off into the time lapse and all that work, don't forget to get your SoccerMom bundle to get your free shipping at WireCare. You guys can see we ordered a whole bunch of stuff from WireCare, a bunch of Tevsil wire, and then the firewall connectors we used on SoccerMom, as well as the Deutsch connectors that we used. And their site, which I know I've said it before, has a really good Deutsch connector assembly tool. That's hard to say all put together. But I know when I first started using Deutsch connectors, I was got a little overwhelmed by all of the different pieces and parts that you need to put a connector together. Well, they have a little section on their website called their Deutsch assembler tool, and that allows you to build out the connectors that you need for your project. And like our firewall connectors, which is a 12-pin connector, in that same menu, they have the 12-pin connectors that don't have the flanges on them, or just go check it out. It's super cool. So time for me to jump in to wiring up the coils. Here we go. All right, well, like I mentioned just a couple of minutes ago, the SoccerMom bundle to get yourself some free WireCare shipping is still active. Now, if you watched our last video about SoccerMom, I said that there was an ending date on that, and through some delays of me editing and some other things, I screwed up. So we're going to keep this bundle open for one more week. Today is August 17th, and we are going to keep it open through August 24th, 2022. So you can order the code or order the bundle up through them, and you will get the code, and the code stays good for your orders with WireCare through the end of August of 2022. Now, hopefully that's enough time for you guys to slide in a few more orders for your free shipping at WireCare. But like I said, I screwed up. I was supposed to have this video out literally over a week ago, but got tied up with some stuff and just didn't do any videos for a little while. So we have been thrashing on some stuff in the shop that's kind of kept me occupied. But anyways, on to the Soccer Mom video. And you can see kind of one of the first things I've done here is I actually reinstalled one of the old injector harnesses that I peeled the loom off of, because I'm trying to get an idea of where the injector harness is going to route, so that when I build my coil harness, it is out of the way and clear of that injector harness. So I'm already on the second coil back now, you can see. And basically what I did is I started at coil for cylinder number 2, because we're on the passenger side of the engine, and routed the wires long enough to route them down to the back of the engine, route across towards the driver's side, and then make a loop to come back up towards the firewall connector. And I only heat shrinked, if that's a word, heat shrunk. Yeah, you guys get the point. I only heat shrinked the wiring to get it past the coil for cylinder number 4. Because what I'm going to do is join them together and then continue on to cylinder number 6 and continue on to cylinder number 8. Now I have made the wires long enough to reach all the way back, but you know, we're trying to make it to where all of this stuff kind of flows together. And the way we're doing this harness, there's all of the triggers go through the firewall connector. The logic ground, I call it, which is, I guess you could say, the control ground for the coil to, I guess, charge itself, is through the main engine connector on the firewall. And then the main power and ground go to the relay block on the firewall. So none of that goes through, and we can have big power available for the coils. The cylinder head ground goes directly to the back of the cylinder head for each cylinder head. So coils on the passenger side, ground to the passenger side head. Coils on the driver's side, ground to the driver's side head. So as you may have already worked out in your head, well, if we've got some wires going through the firewall connector and some going to the relays and or the cylinder head, what are we doing? So we're breaking those wires out, kind of the same ways we are bringing the wires together in a neat and orderly fashion. We will break those out, and actually all of the main power and grounds go to a Deutsch connector. We bring them up from the relays with some large gauge wire so that the coils have plenty of amperage available due to the wire size and the relay sizes. And then for the cylinder head ground, we do kind of the same thing. It's just the wires go directly to the cylinder head ground. Now, the harnesses I've been building here lately are kind of different from your factory style harness, in that both your factory LS and the factory Holley harnesses have a connector that connects all of the coils together to where you can unplug the one connector and then remove all of the coils in a bundle where they still all remain wired together. Well, I like eliminating any kind of extra connections if I can help it and the car still be serviceable. So what we're doing is, if we do need to remove the valve cover, we will just remove the connector from each coil, just like we did on Mullet. So that's kind of what we're doing here. Hopefully the time lapse is playing smoothly. As I'm here recording this voiceover, it's not playing very smoothly, so I'm kind of having to just fill in the blanks of what I see going on. I had filmed this a couple of days ago, so it's not exactly fresh in my brain with what all I was doing, but hopefully it all works out and it's making sense. All right, everybody. Well, I'm back at Will's shop, and you kind of, if you followed along in the time lapse, I got the passenger side of the coil harness done. Had to leave, and it was getting late. These things always seem to take longer than you think they're gonna, but don't be discouraged on your own project, because in the end, you're gonna have something awesome. And the awesome I'm looking at right now is what Will has gotten done in the last couple of days while I've been gone at work, and he's been working on this thing in the afternoon. So check out what he's gotten completely done. So yeah, I did this little bit here. Looks nice. And he took my lead on how I was doing them and bringing them together, wrapping them in the heat shrink. And he copied it for the injector harness, copied it for the driver's side coil harness. So brought all them together. The throttle body and front cam sensor and coolant temp. So TPS, IAC, fuel pressure's there. All that runs beside the coil harness in its own bundle, and then they go back into a boot, and I can't reach it properly from this side because I don't want to mess anything up, but it's done. Like, the main engine harness is completely done. So you undo that, and then you undo this connector here, which is the big power and big ground for the coils, and then the engine comes out. So that's really freaking awesome. I am super excited. I'm actually going to leave the injector harness wiring and finishing that up. I think I'm going to leave that for him, and I'm going to get started on welding the EGT bungs so that we can get the EGTs, you know, the individual probes, routed and shortened up and then plugged into our firewall plug right there. So this is getting really exciting, and I got a call or a text from the engine guy that the block will be ready like 2 days from now. So it's getting exciting. SoccerMom's gonna be ready to go again. And I don't remember if I've showed this before in a video, but the inside of our header, so here's our header from the driver's side. You can kind of see a little haze on some tubes there, because on this side of the header there's molten aluminum sprayed all over it. Evidence of Kevin being stupid. Yeah, you'll get that sometimes. I'll tell you what, one of the hardest things that I've had to do in motorsports, and it's something that I've had to really work with when I work with Cletus on stuff, is because it's got to happen right then, right now. I'm the kind of person that really likes to stop and kind of analyze what's going on. I want to look at every piece of data that could pertain to the runs we're about to make, the runs we've just made, to try and get the best shot at making the most successful next run. So at a drag and drive type event, like say when I did Midwest drags with Cletus, you know, a couple months ago, you got to go. You got to think quick, make quick decisions. And as you saw on the first day, we struggled a lot. Like me trying to get in sync with the pace that he wanted to do things. And then, you know, we ended up kind of having to slow down because the first day we kept going too fast and weren't making the right calls. And then we slowed our way down enough, and we kind of should have, you know, looking back, you always know what you should have done when you look back. But looking back, what we should have done is backed it way up just because of the condition the track was in, just to try and get some kind of run so that we weren't there stressing all day until we got that very last run in that was okay enough to go move on to the next track. Anyways, enough of that jibber jabber. I'm gonna weld some bungs, maybe try to polish off my evidence, and we're gonna get the headers put on this mock-up motor so that maybe I start actually finishing the EGT probes and their wiring. So let's get to work and wrap this wiring job up on SoccerMom. Well, let's get started on welding the bungs to this header, which you can see that Will has already prepped this header by drilling the holes for the EGT probes as well as polishing them up. I prefer anytime I'm welding stainless for it to be super clean, polished as good as I can get it. And I think that's good practice for any kind of TIG welding. If you're trying to weld through any kind of mess, it's not going to turn out well. So you saw me kind of use the probes to set the angle of the bung, and that's just one of my personal preferences. I like to have all of the probes parallel with each other, and I try to get them in line with each other as best I can front to back. One thing that I feel is very important with EGT probe installations is to make them all the same distance from the flange, and also to set the probes where they are the same distance protruding into the header pipe. I think that's understandable for everyone, but if you think about it, if you are trying to compare cylinder to cylinder and you've got one probe sticking in 1.25 inches and another probe that's in 1/4 inch and all mixed and matched between there, well, that's not ideal for how the readings go as far as getting accurate, comparable readings cylinder to cylinder. Now, I'm sure there's somebody who's done a whole lot more research and development on this than I have, and will tell you that the different lengths of the tubes for each cylinder are going to provide with different results. But, you know, that's not where we're at as far as the seriousness of our, data analytics on something like this. I kind of feel like if we put the bungs, 3/4 inch or 1 inch back from the header flange, that should be really consistent data. And that's what I've done, with all the cars that we've done EGTs on so far. And so far, it seems like it's proven to be true. We'll see a little bit of variance cylinder to cylinder, but a lot of times we can balance that out with either timing adjustments or a little bit of fueling. Say we need to cool a cylinder off, we can add a little bit more fuel, whatever we need to do. All right, well, I'm not really sure how far the time lapse recorded for. And if you didn't see the time lapse, Will's back. Hello. Will's getting the injector harness wrapped up. I got all the bungs welded into the headers for the EGTs. And those of you that have watched me before have heard me preach on back purging. Well, Will doesn't have a back purge set up, so I know I should have back purged them. Probably should have ran them to the shop 30 minutes away, but that's an hour of driving, and actually it's like 20 minutes away. So, but 20 minutes there, set up, weld, 20 minutes back. And basically what I did is I just went in and smoothed out the inside where it sugared a little bit. It's not ideal, but I'll show it to you here in just a second if my light turns on. There we go. So you see I just kind of went in and smoothed them out, because around the holes where I was welding, it definitely got some uglies growing inside of the tube there. And you might ask, well, why don't I just do something like that all the time? Well, now that I've sanded and carbided out, first I carbided them out, then I sanded it to smooth it. So now that tube is thinner there, where if I had back purged it, it wouldn't have been anything any thinner where it could possibly crack. This is the most likely place of a thin header tube to crack, being that these first bits of the tube here and then at the collector are practically glowing orange from about 3 seconds into the pull all the way until the end. So we'll see more of that in future videos, because you guys know that I like to do all kinds of different camera angles when we're making drag strip runs. We are getting really, really close to making drag strip runs again in the old Soccer Mom, and that's exciting. So I'm gonna put the headers on, start on the EGT stuff, and then we'll wrap this deal up. And meanwhile, Will's working on the injector harness, the street injector harness, and then I don't know if we've got everything we need for the race injector harness, but cross that bridge when we get there. Follow along, let's see what we do. Well, the first order of business is obviously bolting the header back onto the engine. Can't really figure out what we're going to do on the probe shortening until the header is bolted to the engine. So I get that taken care of, and then I'm going to come in and start on the rearmost probe and get it kind of shortened up. That's the probe that's going to have to make the weirdest turn between the probe and where it goes up to the firewall. So that's typically where I start. Makes it nice and easy. And the Holley probes do have a molded on end, but these little terminal pieces that you see me working with are available from some different companies.
And the thing to remember with these probes is your negative wire is the red wire. When I'm cutting open and splitting out the wiring for the probes, I know that's backwards to what we've all grown up using. You know, red wires are 12 volt positive, especially in all the factory cars and, you know, a bunch of cars I've wired, even this car, everywhere. All the solid red wires have something to do with being 12 volt positive, but not with a EGT probe. So we've gone in and we're shortening them, and it's definitely something that I think just makes the harness look so much cleaner to not just bundle these up behind the cylinder head, which I've seen plenty of people do, but that's not the way we like doing things.
All right, well, that wraps up the EGT wiring, welding, everything for this side. We are going to label each of these just probably with a Sharpie or maybe a little sticker or something like that, just so we can tell the difference for when we pull them out and we stick them back in. You know, ideally, they don't come out much. And if we did have to trace them, it'd be pretty easy too, but since we've got them zip tied all together there nice and neatly, yeah, we could mix them up, maybe flip them 180 degrees or get them out of order or something. But cross that bridge another day in time. We'll finished up the street injector harness. Got that all looking awesome and started on the race injector harness. And that's like all that's left of the wiring.
Getting there.
Except for just we got some headlights to wire. You know, street car stuff. But it's been a long project, but
Getting there, yeah. That's thank goodness.
heck yeah. Like, it's so cool. We were just standing back kind of talking about it and like how the harness kind of disappears now, where before it was a mess. And now it like this side's still in progress, but you know, aside from that one wire that's hanging there, like the injector, first injector harness kind of blends in, the coil harness kind of blends in, and it's so simplified and it's so awesome. We're happy. I mean, and I saw a couple of people act like I think this is the only way to do something, or our wiring harnesses, and that I'm the best at it or whatever. No, it ain't anything like that. I'm just proud of the work that we do because it's a step up from where we were. So, on that note, that's the end of this video. Thanks everybody for watching, subscribing, sharing, commenting, all that fun stuff. See you guys next time.